Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the DocLands Film Festival. That was a wonderful trailer, isn't it? I want to thank our trailer team. They do a great job every year. It gets better and better. Well, my name is Kelly Clement, and I'm one of the documentary programmers here and at the Mill Valley Film Festival. We've probably seen each other all around. And welcome to the screening of Coldwater Kitchen, directed by Brian Kaufman and Kurlyandchik. And this is an amazing film that you're going to see today. It's you're going to get to meet an extraordinary individual here, someone who's changed so many lives and by giving them a renewed sense of purpose with his compassion and by sharing his love of food. And I'd like to bring up the director, Brian.
Hello, everyone. If I'm a bit sweaty, it's because I just had to run to my car for my tickets that I forgot. And, Michigan's not quite as warm as here yet, so. Anyways, it's awesome to be here. Thank you all for coming out this morning. And I work at the Detroit Free Press, which is where this film was produced. So this film is its production took a little bit of a different approach than most independent documentary films. I started working for the Detroit Free Press in 2007. I'm a California native, so I transplanted myself back there and fell in love with winters and Four Seasons and all that. And it was always my goal at the Free Press to try to build our video efforts into something more than just like 2 to 3 minute quick hit community features. So, with the support of an awesome team, we've been over the last 16 years building ourselves into more of a documentary powerhouse. And this is, the latest film that we've created. It's our first truly character-driven film. And my co-director, Mark Kurlyandchik, was the Detroit Free Press restaurant critic at the time in 2018 when we thought about this idea. Now, Mark went to Berkeley Graduate School for Documentary Studies, so he has a doc background. So we teamed up, we approached Michigan Department of Corrections about making a film. Didn't think they were going to say yes because, like most prison systems, camera access is almost impossible in all instances. But they said yes because I think they realized that they had a special person in Chef Jimmy Lee Hill who runs this program. So we started filming, and Coldwater Kitchen was the result of that. And we really, we didn't want to approach this as a traditional talking head interview film. It's so much more personal just to sit down with somebody with a vocal mic. So all of our interviews with all the people we talked to were just long conversations back and forth. And the cinematography just sort of evolved, I guess, as a reflection of the program itself and the vibe that Chef Hill sets. We wanted to avoid the stereotypes of like clanging prison cells and doors and all that, and really just sort of shined our cameras onto the craft that was happening in this place and the beautiful stories of these characters' lives.
Yeah, I see many prison films in my role as programmer, and this is probably the most inspiring, uplifting prison film I've seen.
Thanks.
Thank you for making it.
Thank you.
And we'll have Brian back afterwards for a Q&A from the audience. And before we go, I'd like to thank all our sponsors and all our donors and thank all of you for supporting the DocLands Film Festival. And remember, turn off your electronic devices. And of course, this film is up for the Audience Award, and hopefully you've gotten a ballot, and be sure to return that at the end. Okay, see you in a few.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring up the director of Coldwater Kitchen. Brian. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, how's it watching it again?
For the 353rd time?
Yeah.
I tell people, because my job it's a little different than many documentary filmmakers because we're such a small team. Everything that I film, I edit, our roles are very mixed and singular. And so it's everything that I filmed here with these guys, I also had to edit. And it's an emotional process. You also have to be detached in order to create a story that's, you're not too involved in. But as an editor, it's always my goal with myself when I'm heavily invested in a project to make myself cry during the edit. When I start building in a way that makes myself become emotional. And so I still see those moments here watching it again for the 353rd time where you know that the edit is really getting at these guys' personalities and what they want to accomplish in life, and that's the goal.
Yeah. Have they all gotten to see it? All the subjects? They
have. We want to try to involve them. It's not like, we want to just make this film and get it out there. So we had a world premiere in last November at Doc NYC, and we were able to get some last minute funding through a grant to fly them all out and be part of that experience. Just a week and a half ago, we had the Detroit premiere, which in many ways felt like the homecoming, Dink's family, as you can tell, is probably like half the city of Detroit. So like the theater was packed and the energy was good. And it's all part of the process of letting these guys know that they're a part of this film in every way possible.
And what'd they think?
They loved it. Yeah. And for me, they're chefs. And so we're in Detroit. After the premiere, we had 3 nights of them cooking a meal at Frame, which is a high-end restaurant. They took over the kitchen, and Mark Kurlyandchik and I, the co-director, were able to get in the kitchen and just kind of be their porters, their sous chefs. Whatever they told us to do, we did, and it felt so cool to flip the roles in that way.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. And how long did this take altogether to make?
We started filming in 2018. And filmed all the way up through the start of the pandemic. So about a year and a half of solid filming. We kind of lucked out with timing because we were just about wrapping up production when the pandemic hit. And it gave us that year and a half to then sit back and just myself, in an edit bay at home by myself in my pajamas, thinking about how we're going to edit this film and structured it out. And then once restrictions started to wane a little, we spent another 6 months still in production, going back at these stories, catching up with Dink and Ernest and doing some fill-in shoots to see their stories through. So the timing sort of worked out and finished it up last year.
Oh, wonderful. Now, I'd like to open it up to the audience. Do you have any questions? There's one right there.
I'm wondering how much you knew in advance about the arc of the story and how much of it was reporting and figuring it out as you went instead of gathering the footage and building the story based on that?
We didn't know. We knew there was something there. Beyond that, we didn't really know what there was going to be. There were 50 students in the program. The first couple of visits that Mark and I made, we just, we interviewed all of them. They were just audio interviews. We talked to all the guys for hours on end. And immediately, 3 people jumped out at us. You sometimes you get lucky in filmmaking and sometimes you don't. Characters' lives can go any ways. And these guys, all their stories were so different and so complex, and they continued to evolve that we kind of just latched on immediately right away. And it became pretty clear that if we stuck with it, they were going to show us their lives in really awesome ways. And, coming into a prison, these guys have no reason to trust us. I've been working for the Free Press for almost 20 years. And we've done so many interviews in corporate settings and other areas where it's just people are clammed up and they don't want to tell you anything. And it's so depressing to try to have an honest interview with somebody where they don't want to say anything. And these guys don't have any reason to trust us. And they opened up entirely, almost right out of the gate. And I think a lot of that has to do with Chef Hill and the vibe he sets in his class to be yourself and be open about what you're going through. So it was really interesting process to see the openness of all these guys, even the guys that we didn't follow.
Yeah. And how about the prison officials?
To their credit, they weren't hovering over our shoulders as we were shooting. There was a little bit of give and take about access and stuff. They obviously didn't let us beyond the classroom setting and the garden, and they didn't even want us filming the fence from the garden, which is it's everywhere. How can you avoid it? So there was a little bit of pushback. They wanted us to focus on students who were leaving the program. Of course they would. They want to see progress. So we weren't supposed to focus on anybody who was a life without parole case. And Ernest Davis was when we started, because we didn't know how his court case was going to fall out. And so they didn't want us filming Ernest at first. And it was a little bit tricky, because we knew he was going to get a court case. We knew, these cases are being overturned. We kind of knew it was coming and we hoped it was coming. So we latched onto him and tried to, mic him. And once an MDOC official came in and took the mic off of him and said, you can't film him. You just say, okay. And then the next time you do it again. And he did get out, and his story is incredible.
Wow, but total suspense on your part, right?
Yeah.
How was it going to turn out?
I mean, and for him too, it was real, when you're behind a camera, especially in court, like it was just me filming. So you're so focused on what's going on, but you can see the emotion pouring out of him almost immediately, recognizing that this is his last chance really after 35 years to see the outside again.
Yeah. And another one.
First of all, thank you so much for just a wonderful film. That was just terrific. Really appreciate it. And I imagine you just have a huge amount of film and the editing cuts it way down. And I wondered, in trying to just simplify and having a relatively accessible narrative arc, were there any things that you cut that you sort of thought you didn't quite tell the story fully for someone the way you might have, or there are tough decisions where you thought you were going either way because of that? I'm curious how that played out creatively.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that got cut, and your initial edit's always like 3.5 hours, and you don't want to let any of it go. And even the intro that we built was like 20 minutes, and there were some awesome, funny moments in there, and it meant a lot to us. But like you do need to get down to the character stories, and there's really 4 character stories, and so it's the 3 students plus Chef Hill, and as I was editing this, like, so much it was like, I want to go deeper. Oh, we don't have time. We need to try to keep this to 90 minutes if we can. So there was a lot, and you do have to sort of determine where you're going to end stories. Brad's story, specifically, after he left the program, I really wanted to follow him to see, what became of him as he went through the MDOC system. And he did have debts, and those debts did follow him. And he got jumped and stabbed, and almost, it was like that close to an artery. He could have lost his life. But he survived and stopped using, from what I can tell. He sounds better now than I've ever heard him sound since we were filming, and looks forward to his parole date next year. So I think he's in a good place. It's one of those things where like I wanted to follow his story through, but you do have to sort of decide where to stop it. And he left on a positive note for himself, and he's going to have ups and downs. Everybody has ups and downs, but where do you end it? You want to give him that positive note going out, because I think he's going to do great things. I hope he does.
Again, a beautiful piece of work. And I'm really, really hungry right now. But I was wondering if there are any other programs like this in other prison systems, and do you know of a future successor of Chef Hill?
Good question. In MDOC, there's about 10 of these programs at different facilities. We can say for sure that Chef Hill's is the only one like this. There's a couple other instructors that he respects as well, but they all have the same budget, and Chef Hill spends his training these guys on high-end culinary techniques. And his criticism with a lot of the other programs is like the instructors are just teaching basic, like, flipping burgers and hamburgers, and they're not really, like, the guys are still going through, they're getting their certificates, Pro Start, Serve Safe, et cetera, but it's not the same level. And, his take on it is like, look, you're going to get out, and if you have to flip burgers for the rest of your life, you might be back here. Like, if we can train you at a high end to really fall in love with the craft and do something beyond that, maybe it'll stick. And so I think he wishes there were more people like him. It'd be great, but he's like literally a one-of-a-kind sort of personality. And I don't know about his successor. And I don't know if he's ever going to retire, actually. We thought he was going to retire when we were filming with him. And he's still at it now 3 years later, so.
Thank you for this really positive film. Where can people see this? Where else?
So we world premiered late last year. I suspect that this coming year will be some film festival screenings. We have a very small film team, and we're trying to build a very complex engagement plan with the film for community screenings and aligning screenings with people in the industry, and as well as corrections, who want to use the film to see change on a number of levels. And so we're going to start there, and then hopefully maybe a year from now, let's try to find an outlet through streaming for the film and or broadcast. But we're still learning as we go. The Detroit Free Press is a newspaper essentially, and we've done a few films. This is our most complex, and it's still a learning process to try to figure out how to get our films into the documentary distribution landscape, because we don't really have a history of knowing what we're doing in that realm.
I wanted to say, what a beautiful, beautiful film. I thought how you wove in all the imagery of nature and bees and the music and all. It really was an incredible experience to sit here and watch this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the filming for me, like you mentioned the nature and bees, like, you know, I found my way into that garden. Like Mark was shooting indoors most of the time. I spent hours in that garden. I could spend, hours there just filming the beauty that exists there and the details of the food. So I really did go at it with sort of a focus on the details. And, for me, it was also filming in a prison. You have to be mindful of how much gear you're bringing in. You can't just like show up with cartloads of gear. So we had a very small, relatively small manifest list, they called it, of gear we could bring in. And for me, it was just a single camera body with 2 lenses. And one of those lenses was a macro lens, meaning it focuses very tight. And I tried to use that as much as possible to get as tight as possible on the food, on the garden, and those little details that exist. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question, if anybody. Well, I'm wondering, what's your next project?
We don't know. It's been awesome. The Free Press is owned by Gannett. I mean, I've been there for 16 years now. We've really pushed the craft of what we can do. But it's no secret that the newspaper industry is in dire straits. And every year we lose more people, we lose more resources. So I want to say that, the next 20 years will be spent pushing us even farther. I just hope that's the case.
But anything percolating that you'd like to try?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, be sure and bring it back to us when it's done. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming out.